Two of the men responsible for making U.S. policy, the senior Republican on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Bob Corker, and the senior Democrat on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Eliot Engel. And Senator Corker, let me begin with you. You've resisted calls to suspend U.S. aid to the military, saying the U.S. has to be a voice of calm. But can you still justify continuing U.S. aid in the face of not only a coup, but this crackdown?
Well, look, I think the actions of the last week, no doubt, are going to cause us to suspend aid. And I think it's at the same time a time for us to recalibrate and look at what is our national interest. There's no question that we overestimated what our leverage was, and we've underestimated the leverage that Saudi Arabia and UAE has had on this government. And
Senator, let me just stop you right there. So you've switched your position.
Okay.
You now believe it's necessary to suspend the aid?
Yeah, but let me talk about that. I think we need to look at the tiers of our aid. Let's face it, most of the aid has already gone out the door this year. So what we're really talking about, George, is a debate that will take place this fall as we look forward to next year. And again, I think this whole discussion has been a little bit naive and, to me, very shallow. The fact is that we need to be looking at what is in our national interest. And is it in our national interest to have jihadis in northeastern Sinai that maybe threaten the security of Tennesseans and Americans? Is it in our national interest when we have 4.5% of the population and 22% of the world's economic output to ensure that we have priority passage in the Suez Canal and that we continue to have good jobs for Tennesseans and Americans? So I hope this debate will shift. It'll shift to a place where we're pushing, obviously, for the government to act responsibly. Look, I condemn what's happened with the military, but I also condemn what, in essence, was a political coup by the Muslim Brotherhood.
That's why
and we need to move this debate along, and this fall, hopefully, again, focus on what is in our national interest. And there still are things within Egypt that are very much in our national interest, and we need to keep the lines of communication open.
That's why it's been such a difficult balancing act for the administration and for all U.S. policymakers. But, Congressman Engel, let me bring that to you. Do you agree that now is the time to begin to suspend U.S. military aid to Egypt?
No, I don't. I think it's a time to see what the next step should be. Obviously, we cannot let what's been happening just happen, but I think we have to be very careful and not cut off our nose to spite our face. These are very, very difficult choices. I'm very unhappy, obviously, with the crackdown, but we essentially have two choices in Egypt. And that's a military government, which hopefully will transition as quickly as possible to civilian government, or the Muslim Brotherhood. I don't think the Muslim Brotherhood is a choice. Now, it's very disconcerting that the generals, the military, have not listened to us, but I think we need to keep it up. I think we need to talk to them. We need to try to influence them. And while it's true that we may have less influence over them than we had before, we still have substantial influence over them. They use our military equipment. I don't believe they want to blow up the relationship. It's a little bit bizarre to understand why they're doing what they're doing, but I don't think you throw the baby out with the bathwater. Egypt's an important country, and I think we have to be very, very careful before we willy-nilly just cut off aid.
At the same time, Senator Corker, it seems like the entire region is in crisis right now. I know you're just back from the Syrian border in Turkey, back from Jordan, back from Iraq. You've got conflicts in every one of those countries right now. And at the same time, it seems as if Secretary Kerry is investing a great deal of time in the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, which often seems like Groundhog Day. So does the administration, in your view, have its priorities straight here?
Let me just say one thing quickly, George. I hope we will continue to have an aid relationship with Egypt. Most of the money is out the door this year. It's time for us to recalibrate. Our relationship has been very, very static for the last 35 years. So I don't want to cut off our relations, and I do expect that we will continue to have aid forthcoming in a way that really directly focuses on our national interest.
So you want to cut back but not cut off?
Look, I just think we need to tier it. There are certain things that obviously should not flow. There are certain things that are in our national interest that continue to need to flow. I mean, we want their cooperation in Northeast Sinai. We want their cooperation with the Suez Canal. So again, Let's look at what is in our national interest. I think aid will continue to flow after we have this debate this fall. The money's out the door now anyway for this year. So I think a suspension, but a recalibration, and I don't want to cut our nose off to spite our face either. Back to the bigger regional issue. There is no question, George, that we are not focusing on very important things. In Iraq, the country is devolving. We have a leader there, candidly, who's doing some of the same things the Muslim Brotherhood has done, and that is concentrating power to himself, breaking down democracy. That's creating sectarian violence. And then you look at the regional sectarian violence that's happening in Syria, where you have all kind of proxies weighing in there. That is destabilizing the region. It's happening in Lebanon and Jordan. 25% of their population is going to be Syrian refugees in the short future. So I do think that we have a lot of our national interests there that are not being focused on, especially it's so apparent in Iraq, where it's as if we wish that problem to go away.
So, Congressman Engel, what do we do right now?
We're not focusing.
Well, I think the president's approach was appropriate. I think cutting off the maneuvers next month with the Egyptian military was an appropriate response. I know there are people that say it's not enough, but the president is really caught between a rock and a hard place. Egypt's a very, very important country. Our policy for the past 35 years has made Egypt a staple of security in the Middle East. And we really need to continue that. And while it may feel good to say, okay, just cut them loose, they're not listening to us, they're cracking down and murdering people, which is horrific, I hope that behind-the-scenes diplomacy will prevail. I think they've got to let up a bit, but I think severing aid is not the right thing to do right now. We have to take each country based on the situation on the ground. And if you look at the military and you look at the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, I don't really believe long range we can be allies and partners with the Muslim Brotherhood. Let's hope that we can continue to talk with the military. Let's hope we can get them to pull back. It's not in the best interest of other countries to have them continue the crackdown either, not Saudi Arabia or some of the other countries. So I think diplomacy should try to be prevailed. And again, I think that a kind of cutoff of aid at this moment would be the wrong thing to do.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you both for your time.